Hey, how's it going, folks? So today we're gonna be doing something a little different. We're gonna do something that I'm not really used to doing on this channel. So we're gonna first impressions, basically, right? So for some of you that may or may not know, I started getting into McFarlane's DC Multiverse Toy Line, and it was definitely like it's one of those situations where I've never really seen myself collecting those types of figures, mostly because I've always been more of a Marvel fan than a DC fan, really. But there is a couple characters that I do like, and definitely when it comes to like DC in general, my number one favorite superhero will always be Batman, in the same way that my favorite number one superhero for Marvel will be Spider-Man, right? So obviously, I don't know, it was tempting at first. I wasn't really exactly sure. So of course I gave it a shot. So my first figure was of course Joker. And honestly, I'm quite impressed with what I've seen, because I know that for a very, very long time, the DC Multiverse Toy Line has been pretty mixed for the most part. I can't really exactly say for sure what's everyone's thoughts on it. I know that when it comes to McFarlane, he has like a very specific style, especially when it comes to his Spawn figures, and of course obviously that's his creation, so you can do whatever you want with it, that's fine. But obviously it definitely seems as though with the aesthetic and how the figures look, he tries to kind of fit them in with that that range and like the height and all. But honestly, I only have two Spawn figures, if I'm being honest, so I can't really make a good comparison with that. But today I want to talk a little bit about like how do I feel about the toy line itself, right? Because I barely talk about it at all. The only couple of times I can really think of when talking about McFarlane and his toy lines and all that, I know that one time he was trying to like get into like NFTs kind of, and it's like, yeah, that's a big no-no, if I'm being honest. Like, no, don't do that. But obviously that's, listen, he's in charge of everything. That's, he could do whatever you want, and obviously we can't stop him, but you get the idea. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about like my experience so far. So I have about 9 figures. So yeah, I know. Yeah. So anyway, let's just get right into it, right? So this is gonna be a very random video. I don't think there's really gonna be a rhyme or reason with it. So I've been trying to get this camera aligned so you can at least see my desk and kind of see the figures a little bit, but I'm gonna have to just kind of pull them up anyway, so forgive me if I move stuff around. This is gonna be a kind of a messy video today, probably not much editing either, but you get the idea. This is supposed to be kind of a simple video, but also go over like how I feel about these action figures so far, because I really do like what I see so far. So as you can see, this is the Adam West Batman, which, I mean, that's a classic. Like, why wouldn't you want to get this, honestly? And I really do like the decision that they made with the capes. Now, obviously, not all of them have this sort of, kind of. And oh, sorry, I think my dogs are gonna go crazy. I hope not. You can see Lulu in the background right there, just kind of peeking. Anyway, I do like what they did here. Don't get me wrong. Putting in the wire so that we can actually pose around the cape. Hi, a couple hours later. Anyway, let me continue. Let me continue with what I was talking about, right? So obviously, yeah, like I really do appreciate that they try to at least add a little bit more to the figure to kind of justify the price. And that's another weird thing too when it comes to the history behind some of these figures. Well, I shouldn't really say some, but wow. Long story short, most of them, or at least they used to cost around like 20 bucks or so. That's pretty much how much he was kind of pinching, for these figures, which obviously sounds pretty solid when you think about it, because obviously that's how much Marvel Legends used to cost. But unfortunately, due to tax and inflation and a whole lot of other really weird stuff we don't need to get into, yeah, unfortunately because of that, things just kind of get more expensive over time. So I know some of these have kind of increased a little bit in price to around like $21.99 or $22.99. I'm honestly not too sure, because it's like, how do I say it? He has this weird compulsion with like the platinum edition or the gold labels, which I will admit, that's kind of one of the things that turned me off at first, because I'm like, well, I personally don't, I don't mind that whole idea of like collecting like rare figures and all that, but I'm just saying it kind of feels like he does it like in a very weird way where it just comes off as very debatable. Don't get me wrong, this manga Batman is actually pretty sweet. And yes, you heard me right, manga Batman. So it's not a comic book Batman, it's a manga Batman. But admittedly, he does. I mean, the colors and like the format of it, it looks great, you know. And I will admit, despite the articulation being pretty basic for the most part, it surprisingly works very well. Definitely the tooling and the whole craft of it seems pretty nice, but obviously the problem is that I have just mostly Batmans and maybe a couple of other figures that are not Batman related, and I'll get to those in a little bit. The point that I'm trying to make here is that obviously they have a very certain way of like moving and posing, which definitely works, at least in this case. I actually do like these a lot. I have like so much fun posing these. I mean, it's like, damn, it's almost like Marvel Legends, but for DC. Except obviously the biggest problem that people have is that these figures are slightly tall, and admittedly that was also one of the things that was kind of making me not want to buy these figures. But then I came to the realization that I buy a lot. You know, I used to buy a lot of NECA figures, and they were like they were like 7 or 8 inches from time to time, depending on what you get. And since I'm still collecting NECA figures to this day, although not as much as I used to, unfortunately, but I do buy the Ninja Turtles still. I mean, it's kind of the same thing. So for me, I'm a giant hypocrite. So obviously I got around to it, and yeah, and then I also got like this Batman Reborn. I think this is Reborn or Rebirth. I'm not too sure. This is the one where it's not Bruce Wayne. It's like one of the Robins, basically, which I know you would have never guessed. Also, just my god, I can't wait to review these, by the way. I'll be honest, that's how excited I was when I got these. I was like, wow, you know, I mean, they look incredible. You know, these actually look generally really great. So have I run into any gripes so far? Any kind of problems? Well, surprisingly not with the Batmans, of course. And you want to know why? Because that's another problem that the toy line has, is that obviously it's very infamous for doing too many Batmans, which is kind of funny at first, but at the same time, you'd be pretty surprised. But I don't want to talk too much about the negatives here. I'm just talking about, like, you know, seeing this for the first time and finally having them in your hands. Because I've said it for so many years now that what you see online, it's like it feels completely different when you see them in person and you have them in your hand. Sure, the only downside is that, you know, you have to pay for it and stuff, but that's just how life works, you know. So all right, and so far I'm pretty satisfied with my purchase. I even got the freaking Batman Forever Batman, which, you know, I don't like the movie, but, you know, I think this is still a pretty solid figure. I mean, I liked it because of like the aesthetic and the colors. I really do like how the blue sort of shines a little bit. You can't really tell too much, you know, from my camera quality, obviously, you know, because for some reason, when I do like a video, like, you know, like facing this way, I don't know what it is. It just doesn't match the colors right, if I'm being honest. I know that sounds really weird. And you'll notice that this one doesn't have the wire cape. This is like the normal kind of, you know, cloth. I don't know if this is soft goods. I'm not too sure, because I know that the Masters of the Universe, Masterverse figures, when it comes to like their capes and all that, sometimes they do kind of have that sort of aesthetic to it. And I think that's what I like about them. I guess, you know, makes it a little more real in a way. And of course, did I forgot to mention that I bought like 5 Batmans in one day? So obviously the one that I have over here, I also had the, I think this is the Rebirth one, I'm not too sure. I mean, I like it. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't know, because according to what a lot of people say, this one in particular, the body mold gets reused a lot. So, okay, remind me to not buy those if I ever stumble upon them, because I'm okay with this. I'm fine with it. All right. I do like the idea that it's very blue. I do like that a lot. Now I got like both a Batman that's black and blue, which is very nice. You know, obviously, you know, colors vary, but you get the idea. And yes, I know I got the Adam West Batman, but, you know, obviously this is more of a almost cinematic take or something. I don't know. I shouldn't really say cinematic because it's a TV show, but he also did make a movie too, so you get the idea. I'm not here to talk about the history of these versions of Batmans. I'm just here just to kind of give my thoughts as to how I feel of the figures and the quality, because so far I do like what I see. I'm not disappointed yet. You know. So of course, I guess I should talk about that first figure now too, you know, which is of course the Joker. I decided to kind of put him with the little fishy in his hand. This is based off of the Three Jokers storyline. So this one, I believe, is Joker the Clown, if I remember correctly. I remember hearing a little bit about the storyline, but I don't know too much about it. I remember I bought this at like a store in Connecticut. It's called Game Exchange. pretty cheap price actually. So of course that's probably why it's my first figure. But of course, for first, this is like the first impressions for sure. I mean, this is very nice, for a Joker. I mean, it's pretty basic. He's not gonna have like the super crazy articulation, obviously. Not to mention that this is definitely one of their more older figures. I think this was 2021, but I'm not too sure. I would look at the year, but the thing is, I know that this body mode, according to my research, this body mold, of course, has been used a couple times. So who knows if the years say something different, which I know sounds kind of silly, but sometimes with toys that just kind of happens, as weird as that is. I guess if we were looking at the non-Batman type characters, there's Brainiac. It's pretty freaking sweet. I like that. This looks like something straight out of Terminator or something, or like a freaking like cyberpunk adventure or something. I do like this a lot, though. I'm not gonna lie. This is very impressive. Even though I don't know too much about DC Comics and all that, I do know who Brainiac is, so that's pretty nice, and I do like this version a lot. Even if this is like a very weird, crazy version, and this one I got at GameStop. The ones that I got from GameStop is Manga Batman, Batman Forever, and the Reborn. As well as the Adam West Batman. I also did bought on my GameStop as well. The other Batman, the one with the stupid like digital collectibles thing, was at Target, so that I remember that for sure. Yeah, but the thing with the 22 points of articulation, though, he loves that number a lot, because like there's parts where they look like they can move. Like this is only one piece, but right here it kind of gives you the implication that you could kind of move it, but it really doesn't. There's a lot of parts are lighted. That's the only downside of it. So it definitely seems more like a kind of a statue than anything else, which I get that's kind of the point, but that's a whole other conversation for another day. So I guess to kind of wrap it up, let's take a look at two more characters that are not Batman based. Of course, I got Green Arrow, which admittedly, I'm gonna be very, very honest. This one I wasn't really 100% sure if I was really gonna like it or not. And I actually do end up really liking it a lot. Actually, I'm actually surprised. Although I think the reason for why I think this is pretty good, it's because it definitely feels like the most different out of everybody in a weird way, I guess. I don't know. Definitely for each figure, it's like they're alike, but then they're not alike at the same time. I don't really know how to really explain it, because obviously McFarlane has a very specific way of making his figures. Although it's hard to really kind of dive into how he does it without talking about almost every other figure he's made. Because so far the ones that I'm looking at are the good ones. I can only imagine like the terrible ones out there, because there are some pretty bad ones that I've seen for sure. Oh boy, don't even get me started on like those old Catwoman figures, the ones that was based on the Batman figure. Ooh, now those look kind of rough, especially the ones based off of Arkham City. That one was terrible. And for some of you collectors out there, you probably know what I'm talking about. This one is definitely the more controversial one. We got Aquaman, because obviously he doesn't look as bad as like in some of the promotions for sure. I mean, this other head sculpt that he came with the smiley face, that one was terrible. But at least looking at him, like in person and stuff, this one I can say is not as bad as it kind of seems, And I think my only complaint, honestly, is that I don't like how the trident, it's not actually completely straight, but it's because of how it's packaged, and I don't really know how to fix that. So because of that, I just decided to kind of pose them normally. At least they come with these nice little stands that are actually they surprisingly work pretty well. The only downside is that obviously when it comes to like future figures that are ginormous, I can only imagine that those probably are not gonna get the idea. I don't think they're really gonna like help the character stand too well. I do have Monolith of Spawn or a Megalith or something like that. So far he's standing up pretty fine even without the stand, but you get the point. So far, yeah, that's kind of sort of my first impressions as to how I feel about the McFarlane toy so far. I'm kind of surprised, actually. In a weird way, I kind of regret not buying these sooner. These are actually pretty solid, or at least the ones I bought. Like I said, there are a couple of them, that are not my cup of tea. So I'm just gonna say it. I'm probably not gonna collect these like the same way I collect Marvel Legends. Like I'm not gonna collect every single DC figure I see, but for sure, I guess at least I could give the approval and say that these are actually pretty good for what I've seen. I'm looking at them and it's like, wow, they look pretty perfect. I hope they kind of keep up with this, because I know that Obviously, the ones that I talked about are probably like some of the more better ones. You know, I can only imagine the ones that kind of suck ass. But until then, we're just gonna have to just look more into that in the future when I start getting more of these. So that kind of ends it there. I know today was kind of a weird video, but you know, I mean, I've been working a lot, school. You know, I've been a little tired, so yeah, I do apologize for the kind of delay with the next toy review, but that will of course come on their way. Besides that, I need to talk a little bit about when I'll start doing the whole gaming, playthroughs again. I know a lot of people voted for a replay of Doom, so that might happen somewhere in the near future. So until then, thank you guys for watching and take it easy.